about The Lawnmower Man all the time. Like, that is just burned into my head. I just picture it all the time, and I wish I didn't. Hello everybody, happy Frog Friday. My name is Carly, and today I'm going to be doing my Stephen King ranking video. So I've been reading Stephen King books for around a year now, and I've already read 31 of his books. That's what I've got listed as full books. So I have read a couple of other short stories and novellas, but I'm not including them on here. I only want to include those collections, like the novella collections, like Different Seasons and 4 Past Midnight, once I read the whole thing. So there's a couple extras on here that I have read, but I'm only including things that I have fully read through. And I've been meaning to do this video for forever because this is my favorite type of content to watch on YouTube. As a constant reader, I always love to know how other people rank their books, and I think I have quite a few controversial opinions when it comes to King, so I'm excited to let you know all about them. And I figured 31 books is a good time to start putting my ranking out there. I eventually want to get through all of his books, and once I do, I'll definitely be making an updated video with this same type of ranking, but I think it would be a fun idea to put this out and then be able to compare that later when I make my updated version to see what's changed. Especially since I still haven't read a lot of his bigger works yet, like all of The Dark Tower and It and 11/22/63, which a lot of people have at the top of their list. Alright, well, let's get started. Coming in at 31 on my list is going to be From a Buick 8. And I'm putting that up there because it's just kind of meh to me. I had another one listed as the last place, but I realized that I didn't remember a single thing from a Buick 8, so I figured that one should be bumped down to 31st place. It's just a very forgettable book. And then at number 30 on the list is Gerald's Game. I've watched the movie and read the book, and I just really hated this one. Originally it was in my last place, but like I said, From Buick 8, I just had to put it at the bottom. But it's in 30th place because, of course, there's the famous degloving scene, which I'm sure you know about, even if you've just seen the movie with the wrist. That's, of course, like, great horror. But the rest of the book, I just did not care for. I was bored by it or grossed out in, like, a way that I don't want to be. I don't want to read about child abuse, like sexual abuse. I just was grossed out in a way that I don't want to be while reading horror, so I have no plans on rereading that one anytime soon. It was not for me, even though I know a lot of people like it. Coming in at 29 is Roadwork, which I have represented here by the Bachman books. And I just, so far out of all the Bachman stories that I've read, this is the least interesting one. Sure, it has like a somewhat good and exciting ending, but other than that, it was just kind of a boring story. It's more of a character study, so if that's something you're interested in, go for it. But other than that, the plot really didn't draw me in much for this one, which I think most people tend to agree that this goes towards the bottom of their list. Coming in at 28 is where we start my controversial opinions, I guess, and that is Carrie. This is Stephen King's first published book. Most people, even if they haven't read the book, they've at least seen the movie, which I somehow haven't seen any of the adaptations for it yet, but that's because I didn't really care to seek it out after reading it. I was bored by it. I didn't feel that bad for Carrie. I know that's a big thing where like everyone feels horrible because she's bullied and her horrible mother and everything and all the trauma that she's been through. But I don't think that's something she can use as an excuse for what she does in that book. And I just think it's pretty boring. Like, it's pretty fitting that it was one of his first books because it's pretty basic. I feel like I'm supposed to love it because it's his first published book, and everyone is going to hate that I put it this low down on my list. But that's how I feel, so it is in 28th place. Continuing on with the controversial opinions, another one that tons of people put as their favorite or top 5. For 27th place, I have Salem's Lot. This one I will probably reread again, maybe before I read Wolves of the Kala or something, because a lot of people love this book. I went into it not with the greatest mindset, knowing that I don't tend to like vampire stories, so I didn't really care about it as I was reading it. And I also read it only through audiobook, so maybe I'll go back in physically and give it another chance, but I was just bored by it. I was not scared. I honestly kind of forgot everything that happened in it already, so I probably do need a refresher on it anyways before I get to Wolves of the Kala when I read The Dark Tower, because I know one of the characters plays a major part in that book. But yeah, this one was just not for me. I don't really get what all the hype was about. Sorry. Please don't unsubscribe. Alright, then coming in at number 26 is The Outsider. You know, this one just didn't really work for me. I think it had a good premise. Maybe I would have liked it a little more if I hadn't read it directly after reading the Mr. Mercedes trilogy. But I was just trying to get through everything so that I'll be able to read Holly when it gets published. So maybe I was just a little bit Holly'd out at that point. But yeah, I just wasn't super drawn in by it. It felt more of a basic story to me. It didn't really feel like Stephen King that much. And I did not like the ending of it, all the stuff in like the caves and everything. It's not a bad book by any means. It just wasn't one of my favorites. Again, another controversial opinion. For place number 5, I will bring out the Bachman books again because I am putting Rage up here. Somehow, a lot of you are going to wonder, how could this possibly be above Salem's Lot or Carrie? I don't know, okay? I didn't think it was bad. Obviously, there's like horrible connotations with it, and it was taken out of publication for a reason. You know, obviously horrible storyline, all that stuff. But as a story itself, I thought it was somewhat entertaining. There's definitely some questionable sexual stuff in there as well that I didn't like reading. But the story on its own and like the ending, I didn't hate. I don't know, that feels wrong to say on the internet. Yeah, I did not think it was the worst thing ever. You could definitely tell it was his first, or one of his first written stories though. Definitely felt like a teenager was writing it. Next up in place 24 is Dolores Claiborne. I know. This is a lot of people love this book for some reason. I don't really understand the hype. I do love the storytelling method of it and how it's all told from Dolores' point of view, this old lady. She's obviously a great character. I think the audiobook did a great job. I'm sure the movie's really good, of course, because it's Kathy Bates. And I like that the whole thing was her telling her story in the police interrogation interview, like giving a statement of what happened. I thought that was pretty cool, but the story itself was just like, alright, you know. I don't really have many complaints about it, but there was nothing that amazed me in it. Coming in at 23rd place is Later. First of all, love the cover, the old cold case, what are they called? Cold case crimes? Cold crime? Hard case crimes? Hard crime? Whatever it's called. I love the style of them, that like old look to it. And I really had a fun time with that. I thought it was nice and short and to the point. Although I don't really remember much about it now that I'm thinking about it. I know it's one of his classic like kids with powers stories. And the only reason that it's this low down on my list, I guess, I would have put it a lot higher if it weren't for that ending. I absolutely hated that twist at the ending that just felt like it was thrown in there for no reason. It was gross. It didn't need to be there. I don't know why he put it there. If you've read the book, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, if that was taken out, it would have been bumped up like 6 spots probably. In 22nd place is Revival, and this one was pretty good. It's one of his best endings for sure. I still remember it quite well, which Stephen King is not known for having great endings, but this was a really good one. There's not really a whole lot of plot to it. It's really just following someone's life. I think if you were ever in a band and you want to kind of relive that experience from your childhood of rocking out with your friends, this one would be a good one for you. If you like reading about religious trauma and religious abuse, I guess, and want a semi-Frankenstein-ish story retelling type of thing, this one is a good one for you. I know this one kind of flies under the radar for a lot of people when it comes to Stephen King since it's one of his more recent releases, but it is a pretty interesting storyline. Again, not my favorite, but it's not bad by any means. Coming in at 21 is End of Watch, which is the third book in the Mr. Mercedes trilogy. It is easily the worst one in the trilogy. I was not a huge fan of this one. Obviously, I still liked it because it was a part of the trilogy and it kind of wrapped up things that were going throughout, but I don't like the supernatural and technological twist that they threw in there. I really didn't think that it needed that, and the first two were much stronger books in the series. Now in 20th place is The Running Man, which was made into a movie featuring Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I still have not watched that yet, but I probably should. I've definitely seen like pictures of him in the suit and everything, which is kind of funny. Nothing too serious about this. This is a very fast-paced type of story. It's fun. It's not really a big character study or anything else. It's just really a fast-paced plot line type of story. It reminds me of things like the Bourne Identity movies. That's what it felt like when I was reading it. Coming in at 19 is going to be Cell. I don't really understand all the hate for this one. Obviously, it's a little outdated with his like, ooh, cell phones are bad. That's kind of dumb, but I thought the whole plot in itself was kind of fun. Fast-paced, post-apocalyptic, zombie type of storyline. It was just fun. It felt more like a popcorn book for Stephen King. You know, you're not expecting a lot out of it. You're just reading it to have fun. I think it gets an unnecessarily large amount of hate from Stephen King fans. I think there's a movie for this one too, but I have not seen it yet. And if I remember correctly, this one, it starts off with action like right away. I might be wrong on that, but I think it does, and that was fun. Alright, here we go with the controversial opinions again. In 18th place is The Shining. Yeah, it's not near the top for me. It's near the bottom of my list. I didn't love it, to be honest. I haven't read Dr. Sleep yet, so whenever I decide to read that, I will probably give this one a reread. Again, I only read this one through audio and not physically, so maybe that's my problem. I was not blown away by this one. It was a little too slow for me. I can definitely see how people love the book specifically for the character work in it, but I just, at the point in my life that I'm at, I don't relate to a lot of the things that are going on and a lot of the character problems that take place within this. So it didn't have as much of an impact on me that it might have on other people or even me later down the line, later in my life. So yeah, I wasn't like the biggest fan of this one. Alright, let's continue on again. This one might anger a lot of people. 17th place, complete and uncut, The Stand. Yeah, it didn't make it to the single digits, guys. I am sorry. I just finished this one not that long ago. I do love the character work in this. A lot of the people are characterized really great. I love the whole situation with Tom and Nick meeting, where Nick cannot hear or speak, so he communicates by writing, and Tom can't read. So they gotta figure out how to work together and how to move along together. I really like their storylines. I like a lot of the other ones too. I like the beginning, you know, a couple hundred pages of this when the outbreak is just starting and everything's moving really fast. But after that, all of Man in Black versus Abigail sides, I didn't really care for it. It just got kind of boring. I didn't really care about the ending. It just felt kind of anticlimactic, honestly. I was just a little let down by this book. I had much higher hopes and expectations for this one. Then in 16th place, we have The Dead Zone. This one, I really liked I feel like it's split pretty well into two parts. And the first part I really enjoyed and was intrigued by. And then the second part, it got like political, and I just didn't really care about the plot of that one. So it's kind of the middle of my list because I really liked half of it, and then the other half of it I didn't really care about. So that's why it's there. Coming in at 15 is going to be Joyland. This one is another one of those hard case crime, is that what they're called? Books. And I thought this one was really fun read. It's a really good summer read of a college kid getting a job at a amusement park over the summer. And it's a really short read. It's like a coming of age story, as most summer reads are, I feel like. And it's just kind of a fun one, you know? It's another one of those little popcorny things. I think some people are underwhelmed by this or bored by it, but I thought it was a pretty good one. But nothing too amazing again, so that's why it is middle of the line. Next up, in 14th place, we have Finders Keepers, which is the second book in the Mr. Mercedes trilogy. And I put this one here. It is miles above the third book, End of Watch. And I did enjoy it, but something I've heard other people say, and I kind of agree with, I don't feel like it needed to be part of the trilogy. It should have been more of a standalone book, because the beginning parts were really great, and then once you started throwing in Jerome and Holly, I just feel like they weren't really needed for the storyline. We could have had other characters doing the same exact thing, and it wouldn't have really affected it. I did enjoy the storyline of it. It felt a little bit like Misery though, and I think Misery did a better job at it, so that's why this one is further down on my list. Next up in 13th place is If It Bleeds, which is one of his most recent short story collections. And I actually really enjoyed this one. Or is it short stories or novellas? I don't know. Either way, I thought it was fun. The only one that I don't really care for was Mr. Harrigan's Phone. I didn't really like that one at all. And my favorite in all of them was The Life of Chuck. I really liked that one, the 3 parts of that. And I just felt like this short story collection was very thought-provoking. It really felt like Stephen King was finally starting to realize that he's getting older and that he's not going to be around forever, and he needs to start putting these things down that are in his head. And he's really thinking about his life and the legacy that he's leaving and how things around him are affecting him. So this one just feels a little more deep than the other stories that he's put out so far. Then in 12th place, I have the short story collection Skeleton Crew. I thought that one was just kind of middle of the line. There were a lot that I liked, but now that I'm thinking about it, there's not many that I can recall other than The Raft, which I didn't even really like The Raft. I know a lot of people love that one, and The Jaunt, a lot of people tend to love. I think it's this high up on my list because of The Mist. I absolutely love The Mist, so that kind of brings it up. But a lot of the other ones are very forgettable, and I think the collection as a whole is just a little bit too long. I think he could have shortened it back a bit. Alright, this one might make people mad as well. This book just missed my top 10, and it is in 11th place, Pet Sematary. I thought this was a great book. Obviously, this is the one book that King almost didn't publish because he thought it was too scary. I absolutely love this cover, I do want to say, but I thought it was fine. It was a good story, but I don't think it affected me as much as it might affect someone who has a child. I feel like I'm not in the right life stage to be super affected by this one, so I think that's why it's not in my top 10, but overall it is a solid story. Now in 10th place, the first one to make it onto the top 10 is the short story collection Night Shift, and this one was really great. This was the second Stephen King book that I ever read, and I still remember a lot of them to this day. There are definitely some memorable ones in here. I never hear anyone talk about this one, but I think about The Lawnmower Man all the time. Like, that is just burned into my head. I just picture it all the time, and I wish I didn't, but because of that and a lot of the other ones are also great, this has made it into my top 10. I will definitely be rereading this one at some point. I think it's great. Now in my number 9 spot is at a lot of people's bottom of their lists, and that is The Colorado Kid, which is the last of his hard case crime stories. I really hope I'm saying that right. I love The Colorado Kid. I don't care that the ending is, bad and it doesn't tell you anything. I just love the back and forth between our 2 main characters, and I think it really helps that when I was younger, I watched and loved the TV show Haven, which is based off of The Colorado Kid, so I feel like I had more of a backstory, even though the rest of the show was just made up stuff, but I think the actors in that made me really like reading The Colorado Kid because I could picture the 2 of them bantering back and forth the whole time. So I really enjoyed The Colorado Kid, and I think it gets an unnecessary amount of hate. Now in 8th place, I have The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. I love survival stories, I love baseball, I love stories that take place in the woods, and it's always great to have a nice short read by King. Also, it's a very age-appropriate book for a child, so if you have a young kid that's wanting to get into King or something, I think this is a great starting place. I also like how the ending is kind of ambiguous, which I feel like that could probably annoy quite a lot of people, how you're not sure exactly if what she's seeing in the woods is real or an animal or supernatural or whatever, but I really like that part of it. Then in 7th place, we've got one of his saddest books, and that is The Green Mile, which I love the little mouse in this. Mr. Jingles, I believe is his name. And I love the characterization throughout it. It's just a great story overall. But the reason it's not going to get any higher on this list is because, honestly, the movie is so good that if I want to re-enter this world, I would just watch the movie instead of reading it again, because it's that good. So it is a great story though. If you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend. And now in 6th place is where it started to get really hard, but for 6 I went with Mr. Mercedes, which is the first book in the Mr. Mercedes trilogy. I don't know why, but I put reading this one off for so long. I thought I wasn't gonna like it for some reason. It feels weird to say that I enjoyed a story about a person who drives a car into a crowd of people and kills them, domestic terrorism, but it's a great story. And I hear complaints a lot about how it's not that exciting because you already know who the killer is, so it's not like a mystery or anything trying to figure out who the killer is. But I don't think that really matters. As I was reading it, it reminded me a lot of something like a Criminal Minds episode where you're seeing both sides, where obviously you know who the killer is, you're seeing that side of what they're doing, but you're getting both point of views, and it's still interesting. Thought it was very fast-paced. I like the back and forth between the two and the spying that was going on and stuff. I think it's definitely the best in the trilogy. Although it does bother me a little bit, his characterization of Jerome and Holly. It bothers me a lot with Jerome. He does this thing where he has them talk in certain ways that are meant to be racist, but it's okay because he's joking because the guy Jerome himself is black and he's making fun of the other characters, but I just feel like that was unnecessary for King to do. And obviously he makes our bad guy super racist and stuff, but that's okay because he's a bad guy. I don't know, it still just feels weird that King can write that. I also don't love Holly as much as I feel like most people do. At first I feel like I kind of related a bit to her, but then this isn't necessarily just with Mr. Mercedes, but throughout the trilogy, I feel like one of her main traits is oh, Bill changed her. She needed Bill to become who she is now, and everything she does and every positive trait that she's gained is because of Bill. It feels like she needed a man to make her into a better person, which I just don't like how he did that. And it's brought up all the time. I've never heard anyone mention that before, but it bugs me all the time. It's in the whole trilogy, in The Outsider, and I really hope he kind of stops bringing that up in Holly. That's going to be released in September, but I somehow don't think he will. So I do like her as a person, but I'm just getting kind of tired of reading about how important Bill was and how she was nothing before she met him, basically, and how she was a mess. But anyways, now that I'm done ranting, we'll go into our top 5, and coming into 5th place, again with Bachman books, I've got The Long Walk. I absolutely love The Long Walk. It might not hit the same on a reread since I already know what's going to happen in the end, but I don't know how he did it. He just made literally kids walking entertaining for the whole entire book. How did he do that? I don't know. But the characterization is great. The whole premise is great. My only complaint about the book is the pace that he makes them walk at, which was, I think, 4 miles per hour. I don't think he realized how unrealistic that is, going for more than a couple hours. Most of them would have dropped out way sooner than they actually did. There's no way that it would have lasted as long as it really did. But other than that, I loved The Long Walk. Coming in at 4th place was Do McKee, because I loved reading about a new setting. It's fun to see him write about a warm climate in Florida, especially because I frequently go to the area that he talks about. Obviously, Do McKee is a fake location, but he describes it that being located in a place that I'm very familiar with, So I knew a lot of the street names that he was talking about. Those are real. My college is mentioned in it. But just in general, I thought it was a great storyline, other than the whole Florida part. It's definitely a creepy one, too. Yeah, I just thought it was really fun. And obviously, it gets, again, the bonus points for having a frog on the cover. Alright, now in third place, we've got, drumroll please, Cujo. It really was difficult for me to do these top 3. Obviously, I have a Cujo shirt. Love me some Cujo. Cujo was a good boy. It will always have a special place in my heart and a place high up in my list no matter what, just because it was the first Stephen King book that I ever read. So obviously it got me to become a constant reader. And I just love it. I like when he does stories that are realistic and could actually happen rather than supernatural things. I'm more a fan of the realistic aspects of his writing. And also the absolutely brutal ending that is in the book. That's all I'm going to say about that. Now, this I could see flip-flopping in the next video, but in second place, kind of hurts to say this, it is Under the Dome. This big tome I absolutely loved. Super fast-paced, multi-POV. Chapters are like a page or two long. It throws you right into the action. Obviously, the dome is potentially supernatural. You're questioning why that's there. But it's kind of in the background of the story. And it's more a focus on, like I said, the realistic aspects of life. How quickly people devolve when they're put in certain situations and how they crack under pressure and act when power is up for grabs. I think a lot of people would disagree with me putting this one this high up because this is notorious for having one of, if not the worst, Stephen King book ending. And I agree with that, but it's like 1,000 pages or something. And the first 950 pages or so I absolutely loved. So I don't claim the last 50 pages. I might as well rip them out of there, you know? Let's forget it ever happened. The beginning of it is just so good that I don't even care about the ending, okay? It trumps it. And I thought it was just fun. This has some of the greatest evil people, villains ever to exist in his books. It's got a dog that I believe survives until the end, which is insane for a Stephen King book, so kudos to that. Even though there's like 3 dogs in this book, but we don't need to talk about that. And I really loved all the sections with the chef, who was like the meth chef. He created the meth and he got high off his own supply. That whole storyline was great. Yeah, I feel like there's something for everyone in this one, you know? And so that leaves, coming in at number 1, Misery, my favorite Stephen King book. It's just so good. That's all I gotta say. No, I mean, it's amazing. I actually like cringed while reading it. Like I remember my face actually like ooh as I was reading it, which never happens. Like I'm usually reading it like that's what my face looks like when I'm reading it all times essentially. I don't react really, but to this book I definitely did. I didn't like reading the actual I didn't like reading the actual Misery storylines in it. Couldn't care less about those parts, but the parts with Paul Sheldon and Annie Wilkes were great. I could just feel the tension, you know, slice it with a knife, but it was really great, and I think it's way better than the movie. She's obviously, again, one of the best villains that he's ever written. Annie is Paul's #1 fan, and this is my #1 book. And that's all of the full Stephen King books that I've read so far, all 31 of them. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more Stephen King content in the future. Let me know down below how incredibly wrong my ordering is, because I'm sure you all disagree with my list. I had a lot of controversial opinions in this, so go ahead and yell at me down below. So for today's frog fact, I'm going to be talking about the age of frogs. Did you know that similar to the way that trees can be aged or dated based on the number of rings that are around them, frogs can be dated or aged the exact same way. Every year that a frog goes into hibernation, a new ring grows around their bones. So scientists can age a frog by looking at how many rings it has around the bones. And that's all for today's video. Thanks again for watching. I hope you all have a great day. Goodbye.